At the end of a quiet suburban street stood a small house that seemed to embody the idea of a perfect family. The husband, a diligent office worker, greeted the neighbors each morning with a warm smile. His wife, graceful and attentive, carried the image of a devoted homemaker. Their young child often played in the yard, laughter echoing across the street, making passers-by whisper, "What a beautiful family." But behind those closed doors, a different reality festered. Once the smiles faded, silence pressed down heavily on the walls. The husband's tenderness dissolved into a cold, watchful gaze. His temper was quick to ignite, sometimes over a misplaced word, sometimes over a dinner that wasn't to his liking. The wife learned to hold back tears, swallowing her pain in silence, trying desperately to maintain the fragile picture of happiness she once believed in. But in the depths of her heart, she knew the truth. This was no longer a home. It had become a cage, a suffocating prison where love had been replaced by control, fear, and a slow erosion of her spirit. The neighbors continued to see the family as flawless, but inside the walls of that small house, tension grew sharper each day. The husband's once charming smile had become a mask he wore only for the outside world. When the door shut behind him, his words turned sharp, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. He controlled everything, the money, the conversations, even the wife's ability to see her friends. "Why do you need them?" he would ask, his voice calm yet threatening. "You have me. Isn't that enough?" The wife's silence became her only shield. She stopped calling her mother, avoided invitations from neighbors, and learned to smile when asked if everything was fine. But inside, she felt herself shrinking, becoming a shadow of the woman she once was. At night, when the child was asleep, arguments would erupt like violent storms. Sometimes it was about money, sometimes about imagined slights. The husband's voice thundered through the house, leaving the wife trembling. She longed to scream, to fight back, but fear chained her. Fear of his rage, fear of what he might do if she pushed too far. Yet in the quiet aftermath of these battles, another fear crept in, fear of
the house that once felt like a dream was now a stage where roles were played, lines rehearsed, and the truth buried deep. But behind every forced smile, behind every "we're fine," the cracks widened. And those cracks were beginning to let something darker seep through: resentment, desperation, and the whisper of a thought the wife tried to push away but couldn't. What if escape was only possible through the unthinkable? The days stretched on like a slow suffocation. What had once been a marriage built on vows of love had transformed into a battlefield where silence and fear ruled. The husband's voice, once filled with tenderness, now dripped with venom. The wife could not remember the last time she laughed without hesitation, the last time she felt like herself. But what made it worse, what twisted the knife deeper, was that the husband still knew how to perform. In public, he was flawless. At family gatherings, he pulled his wife close, kissed her forehead, and whispered words that sounded sweet but felt like poison on her skin. Friends admired him, colleagues respected him, and even the neighbors envied his devotion. Behind closed doors, however, the mask cracked. He hurled insults like weapons, tore down her self-worth until she barely recognized herself. And sometimes, his rage turned physical. A slammed door, a fist against the wall just inches from her head, the lingering threat that one day it wouldn't stop at the wall. The wife's body bore no scars visible to the world, but inside, she was bruised, bleeding. She found herself staring at the kitchen knives longer than she should, her mind whispering terrible things. She hated herself for even thinking them, but the thoughts wouldn't leave. Each night became harder. Sleep no longer brought rest, only nightmares. She dreamed of running, but her feet would not move. She dreamed of screaming, but her voice would not come. And every morning she woke up, trapped in the same prison of her marriage. Her child, innocent and fragile, became the only anchor keeping her afloat. She would hold him close after the husband left for work, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "One day, we'll be free. I'll protect you, I promise." But promises made in desperation are heavy, and she knew the cost of failing would be unbearable. Then came the turning point. One evening, as the family sat together at dinner, the husband's temper flared over something trivial, a misplaced bill, a forgotten errand. His voice thundered through the kitchen, his hand slamming the table so hard the dishes rattled. The child cried, covering his ears, while the wife sat frozen, her heart pounding like a drum of war. In that moment, something inside her broke, not with noise, not with rage, but with chilling clarity. She realized that no one was coming to save her. No one saw the truth because he was too good at hiding it. And if she didn't act soon, her child would grow up thinking this was normal, thinking this was love. The wife's eyes shifted to the knife beside the bread, glinting under the dim kitchen light. She quickly looked away, but the image carved itself into her mind. For the first time, the unthinkable didn't feel impossible. It felt inevitable. From that night on, she was no longer just surviving, she was planning. Every smile she forced became part of her disguise. Every nod to her husband's demands was a mask to hide what she was building inside, a resolve forged from pain and desperation. She was calculating, watching, waiting for the moment when her fear would finally turn into action. And the scariest part? She felt no guilt in imagining it. Instead, she felt something else rise in her chest, an anger that was colder than fear, sharper than grief. An anger that whispered, "If he can destroy me every day, why should he get to live another one?" The house, once a cage, was now becoming a ticking time bomb. The stage was set for something irreversible. The perfect family image was about to shatter. Blood would soon stain the walls hidden behind those smiling photographs. The days that followed were strangely calm, almost unnervingly so. The husband continued his routine, going to work, charming neighbors, keeping up appearances, but the wife no longer felt the same suffocating fear. It was replaced with something far more dangerous: control. She started to notice patterns in his behavior. What time he came home, how much he drank before dinner, when he was too tired to notice the small details. She began cataloging every moment, like a detective studying her own case. Only this time, the crime wasn't waiting to be solved, it was waiting to be committed. Her child became her silent witness, though too young to understand. She kissed him every night before bed, whispering the same promise: "I will protect you. I won't let him hurt us anymore." But her eyes, glimmering in the dark, betrayed that she meant those words in a way far different from before. Late at night, when the house was cloaked in silence, she sat at the kitchen table staring at the same knife. The metal caught the pale glow of the moon through the curtains. She traced its edge with her finger, not enough to cut, just enough to feel the coldness. That coldness became her comfort. It reminded her of the resolve she was building. Every insult he spat, every time he slammed his fist against the wall, every cruel smirk, it all became fuel. Instead of breaking her, it sharpened her, like the knife she now saw as her salvation. The turning point came one stormy evening. Rain pounded against the windows, lightning flashed across the sky, and the house seemed to tremble with the storm's fury. The husband had been drinking again, his voice loud and slurred as he accused her of things she hadn't done. He pushed her against the counter, his shadow looming like a monster. But this time, she didn't flinch. Her hand slid across the counter, brushing the handle of the knife she had left there on purpose. She didn't grab it, not yet, but the knowledge that it was there gave her a terrifying sense of power. For the first time in years, she felt stronger than him. That night, after he collapsed drunk in the bedroom, she stood in the doorway watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell, each breath a reminder that he still existed, that he still had control over her life. Her fingers tightened around the knife she had taken from the kitchen. She lifted it, just slightly, testing the weight. But then, the sound of her child stirring in the next room snapped her back. She lowered the knife, trembling, her breath ragged. Not yet. The timing wasn't right. She placed the knife back in its place, but something inside her had shifted forever. There was no going back. The wife was no longer a victim waiting for escape. She was a hunter, patient and calculating, waiting for the precise moment when justice, her justice, would finally be delivered. The walls of their perfect home were closing in. Soon, they would echo with more than just arguments. Soon, they would hold the sound of something final. The question was no longer if, it was when. Freedom came at a cost. When she finally walked away, the silence in her apartment was deafening. No more arguments echoing through the walls, no more controlling questions at every turn, but also no more illusions. She had to rebuild from the ground up, facing the financial losses, the broken trust, and the scars left behind. Yet, for the first time in years, she breathed without permission. Friends who once worried in silence now embraced her courage. She realized that the price of staying in a toxic marriage was far higher than the price of leaving. Staying meant losing herself piece by piece until there was nothing left. Leaving, though painful, meant reclaiming her identity, her dreams, and her peace. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she carried one truth. Love should never feel like a prison. A healthy marriage is built on trust, respect, and mutual growth, not fear, control, or manipulation. Her story is not just her own, it's a warning. Sometimes, the most dangerous place to be is next to someone who swears they love you. And the real question remains, how much is too high a price to pay for love?